Hi, I'm Tony Bowen, and welcome to my Corn Country Rails. Well, this is my second part on developing my water features on my layout. The first one, I just kind of did a overview of what they look like. I've had these areas on my layout for a number of years now, and I just haven't developed them. And this year I decided it was time to kind of start working on those to give the river areas a little bit of a life to them to add to the layout. So let me show you what I've done since the last month. First, I used white glue on the creek bottom. I used a thick amount to hold the creek items in place, such as the scenery materials, some tree limbs that I would use, and also some rock and other debris. Next, I used some of the natural sand from the area where I took the background photo I was going to use. I made sure to sift through the sand and treat it to kill any organisms or little insects that might be in the sand before I applied it to the layout. Since my layout is a double deck, I made sure to put a covering over the lower deck. I used this old plastic tablecloth from an Easter dinner we had several years ago. This did a nice job of keeping the lower deck clean, but also was a good indicator if there was any drips or leaks of glue that would come through from the upper deck. Luckily, it must be sealed well. There was nothing that was on the tablecloth. After I was pleased with how the creek bottom turned out, I used a dropper with alcohol and coated the whole area to break any surface tension that the white glue might have. Then I just left it alone and let it set for about 24 hours. After about 24 hours, I checked the area to see how everything had dried. I also added 3 trout fishermen to the scene, a canoe, and a few more logs, some that would be partially submerged once I get ready to pour the deep pour water. For the photo backdrop, I used a photo I took while I was on a bike ride this past summer. I also took some sand from the same area that I was going to use as the creek bed. I did have to flip the photo to align with the modeled creek I had on the layout, but this was easy to achieve in Photoshop on my computer. Since this was the first time I've ever used a photo for a backdrop, it was a kind of an experiment, so I just copied the photo on regular paper. I found out right away I had way too much water, so I trimmed out some of the water, and then using a trick that I saw in Tony Coaster's book, where if you want to cut out the tree line and the skylight and have it kind of blend in better with your own background, I went ahead and did that as well. Now, my tin plate that I have here looks pretty good. So I think I'm ready to have the actual print done on matte paper, and then I will adhere it to the backdrop, and then I think this area is ready to have the water poured. For this area of the layout, it has a little work still left to be done. First off is I need to take out the bridge, I need to take out the roadway bridge, and a lot of my abutments and that are just setting in place, so they need to be adhered down. And I've got some areas back behind where I already know they're not probably sealed the best, and so I'm going to need to caulk all of those areas. So my gut instinct is telling me behind these abutments, behind this one here, this one here, it's better just to seal it all, just because water, when I get ready to pour it, if there's a leak anywhere, it'll find a way to escape. And so I'd rather have all of it sealed up. The open area out here, no problem at all, but it's those little crevice areas that concern me. And of course, once I start pouring the water, you can't really do anything to stop that leak from happening except come up from the bottom of the layout and maybe try to patch it or put some kind of tape over it. So I'd rather just have it all sealed up to start with. The other thing with this one is kind of like on the smaller creek is I'm working on a photo backdrop. So once again, another photo that I've taken, just did it on regular kind of copy paper. And the thing I've noticed is, first off, it's not gonna reach the span. I've got a wider creek than I do pictures. So consulting with my daughters, basically saying, hey, one is going to remove the total reflection here, and then we're going to basically splice it and add or widen the kind of river area. And so that'll have the bank on one side, kind of a spliced in area of this, just kind of seamed in. And of course, once the reflection is gone, it's going to look the same. And then the other bank will be on this side. So if you can almost imagine where that line is, kind of the picture being cut, pulled apart with more water being added. The other thing is we'll probably shrink it down a little bit too. I don't want the tree line to be that high. Instead, I'd rather go for something that's a little more like this, where just like on my upper creek and this one, I can bring more trees in and kind of blend around it. And of course, kind of dull some of the edge there so it's not such a sharp edge there as well. So those are some things that are in store. So I hope you stick around while I kind of get this area prepped and ready for hopefully to also do its river bottom, but I gotta caulk it first. And so that obviously, once I do the caulking, that's probably gonna set for 3 or 4 days before I come back and do anything to the river bottom here. So I hope you'll stick around and watch my progress here. So we'll kind of come in and get a close-up shot here. Basically what I wanted to do was around the edges of the abutments on either side, really seal that in well so nothing could get behind that. And then areas like this, I can come back with some bushes, some more scenery, something that can hide that before I get ready to pour the water. I just want to make sure that was really sealed up on both sides of the abutments. This one's pretty well protected. It's kind of nestled in there, but either way, I still wanted to have it all sealed in. And then I kind of buttered the back and the bottom of the abutment to kind of hold it in there as well. Now, this bridge one, you can see I've got quite the gap in there, and that could be kind of troublesome. If I'm worried about where there's going to be a leakage, it's there. So I'm going to basically take the caulking gun and I'm going to fill that thing up and then use my little tool here and just kind of push it all down, and then hope that, you know, within about a 48 to 72 hour time that everything is dry in there. I mean, most of the water should be on this side, but I just worry if, you know, if water would come back there. It shouldn't, but I would rather plan ahead. And then obviously as I come in with the caulking and fill in that kind of crevice, I can bring the scenery material on that right up to the back side of that abutment, and we won't know that gap even exists. This one here that's kind of standalone is pretty well done. It's already been glued in place along with that one years ago. The one thing I do want to do is replace the phone poles there. They just have the temporary kind of stand-in Atlas phone poles, and instead I want to do the Osborne laser cut phone poles, at least for that area. And then, you know, would be great to replace all the phone poles in time with those. But the Atlas ones, they do a great job for stand-in ones temporarily. So I'll get back to work on filling in that area right there. Well, and there you have it. It doesn't look very pretty, but it definitely fills in that back area. And then after that dries, I can come back. I can obviously on this back side bring the scenery material right to it. And then just like I did with my other creek, I will have sand and rock and some tree limbs and that. So it's amazing how much of that will be covered up that you won't even see. And also I went with clear caulking just for the fact of, obviously when it dries, it's going to be clear. And so right now it has kind of that gloss to it, but it will tone down. And I'll probably put some debris hung up along here too, some tree limbs and that. Pretty typical of what you would see in Iowa. And then just around the front of the fascia, I just put a bead of caulk here. Didn't take it all the way here because it's pretty much zero here. It's pretty much level. So at one time I thought the bank would cut, but I'm thinking the bank's gonna kind of come in like here and end. So some of this I may just fill in with more greenery, some swamp grass and that. But I'm thinking the water is probably going to end right here because as it goes up, there's very little fascia and water level because it's pretty much the same. Here, it actually drops down. The fascia sits up probably about a good 1/4 of an inch, but here there's nothing that sets up. So that's all I can basically do in this area. Hopefully this will be something that I can continue to keep working on in November. And then we can see what it looks like come December. So thank you for tuning in and watching the second part of my water feature update. I'm hoping the upper deck, I'm hoping by next month you can watch me pour that and see how that's done. And I will continue to keep working away on this lower deck for the Big Bear Creek to get the river basin or the creek basin ready to go, and hopefully the backdrop, and get it ready to also pour, whether that's in December or in January. So thank you for watching, and as always, if you have questions or comments, feel free to leave them below. And I hope if you found this interesting that you'll like my video, so like it if you liked it, and hopefully you'll tune in again. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.